Hi, this is Matt Plummer with the California Quest. Today I want to answer the question that probably every Californian is asking. Can we stop the rain and snow? I looked at this question back in January 17th, about 2 months ago, and there I gave you the answer. No, we couldn't at that point. I talked through 6 metrics that explained why I thought that was the case. Now, 2 months later, I'm giving you a different answer. That yes, we should be able to pump the brakes, slow things down on the rain and snow. Not that we actually have control over it, but that we are in a very good position. Now, I do still want us to get more rain or snow than we've gotten historically in the month of April. And that's because when we look at the wet and dry cycles in California, we have to remember that we have to be storing up water for the next 2 to 4 years, not just this summer. And that's what the cycles are showing us, that the dry cycles last about 2 to 4 years over the last 2 decades. So we can't just be thinking about this summer. We need to be thinking about the next 2 to 4 years. And so that would lead me to recommend, not that we can control it, but that we get about 2 to 4 inches of rain, depending on where you are in the state. So in April, historically, typically we get about 1 to 2 inches, depending where you are in the state. And I'm saying, let's get 2 to 4 inches. That is not a ton. So just to give it some context, in the last 24 hours in Redding, we've gotten about half an inch of rain. And it hasn't even rained over the last 12 hours. So that's about 12 hours worth of rain. So a couple storms would get us there plenty. So what are the 6 metrics that lead me to believe that we're in a pretty good place and we need just a bit more rain in April to really seal us off for the summer? Well, the first one is the U.S. Drought Monitor. And when we looked at this in January 17th, we saw that 95% of the state was considered to be in a drought. Now, today, just 36% of the state is in drought, with 45% totally in the clear, meaning it's not even considered extremely dry, and another 19% that's coming out of the drought. It's considered extremely dry. In January 17th, we had 0% that were fully in the clear. So we've made huge progress on the U.S. Drought Monitor. Then let's look at rain. So we've gotten over 27 inches of rain over this season, starting on October 1st. Right now, we are at almost 150% of the average rain that we typically get. And we also have gotten more rain over this winter than we typically get through the whole water year, which starts October 1st and runs through September 30th. So we're in a good position on rain. When it comes to snowpack, if you've been seeing what's happening in Tahoe and really across the Sierra Nevadas over the whole state, you are not going to be surprised to find that we are now at 218% of the snowpack that we typically have by April 1st. So more than twice as much snow as we have in the typical snow season is already on the ground in these mountains. That is a really good place to be. If you're living there or trying to ski there at this point, it might be a little challenging. So that takes us to our 4th metric, which is around reservoirs. On January 17th, I said that our reservoirs collectively, we have about 16 reservoirs that are our main reservoirs, and that they were collectively just over half full, which put us at that point at 88% of our historical average. Good news, right now we are at 73% full of our total capacity in those 16 reservoirs, and we are at 104% of the historical average. So we have just exceeded the historical average of where we typically are at this point in the year in terms of reservoir capacity. We went from 40% full to 73% full in the last 2 months. So that's really great progress. And honestly, we might not be able to make a ton more progress because we have, as I just shared, a ton of snowpack waiting in those mountains for the sun to hit it. That's going to come flooding down into those reservoirs and really going to fill them up. So if we're hitting 100% now in terms of capacity at some of these reservoirs, when that snow melts, we're going to have to flush a bunch of water downstream. And that takes me to another thing that we want to be looking at, which is how much water are we flushing out to sea? That's been a big topic of debate. So if we look at the Shasta Dam, which we looked at in January, at the point where we looked at it in January, actually the water that was being flushed out of the dam was at a really low point, much lower than historical. That has gone back up to where it was in the fall. And so nothing really unusual about that. It's kind of our typical level. If we look at the Delta River Basin, which is where a bunch of the water from Northern California flows through the San Francisco Bay Area and out to the ocean, there 94% of the water that's coming in is going out, And that is basically where it was in January. So doesn't sound great, but no real change there. Now, some of you might have seen a video that Kevin Kiley posted that said that we are currently flushing 20,000 cubic feet per second of water out of Folsom Reservoir. And that is true. And we went from 5,000 cubic feet per second up to 30,000, and now we're down to 20,000. And it's kind of interesting because Folsom Reservoir is currently only at 64% full of its total capacity, but that is 110% of the historical average. So it's more full than it typically is on average, but still only 64%. Now, the reason given of why we're flushing this much water is, again, what I mentioned earlier. If you look at the Folsom Reservoir, it's right at the base of the Sierra Nevadas, and so they're likely expecting a lot of snow runoff to come filling that in the coming weeks and months as things warm up. The good thing is that not all of this water is being flushed directly out to the ocean. Instead, it's being diverted. The Bureau of Reclamation just made an agreement with the State Water Resources Control Board to divert 600,000 acre feet, which is a lot. That's a really good sum, into wildlife refuges and our groundwater recharge basins, which basically means we're going to divert that water so that it can fill up the wells that are currently underground, which is a major source of water for us, especially in the Central Valley for agriculture. Okay, that takes us to groundwater. Here, I don't really have an update because most of the wells are measured in the fall and the spring. So most of them, there hasn't been any updated measurement. We've basically gone to, according to the numbers, we're at 62% of our wells are below the level that they should be at, versus 64% in January 17th. But again, that is really meaningless because most of those we haven't measured. That takes us to our final metric that we want to be thinking about. And this one actually takes us out of California to the Colorado River and its corresponding reservoirs. So if we look at the river itself, we're in pretty good shape. So all across the board in the upper Colorado River basin, that's above 100% of the historical levels there. If we look at Colorado as a state, right now we are at 63% of the state is not considered to be in drought versus 40% 2 months ago. So improvement there, but still a sizable portion of the state is considered to be in a drought. Now, for the two most concerning data points here, Lake Mead and Lake Powell. Lake Mead is just at 28% of its capacity. Lake Powell, even worse, at just 23% of its capacity. A big portion of the water that goes to supply Southern California comes from the Colorado River and goes through those reservoirs. So the fact that those are basically around just a quarter full is not a really great situation for us. So in summary, we could do for a bit more rain in April, twice the average. But more importantly, we really want more rain and snow to hit Colorado and to fill up the Colorado River and those two reservoirs so that can supply Southern California when it gets hot in the summer.